Okay, it's 6:30. Let's call this meeting to order. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Any public comment? Seeing none in the room. Any public comment online? Okay, well then we'll move to the first item on our agenda, superintendent's budget.
Yeah.
Roy?
Good evening. I think I'm going to stand up for this if you don't mind. So I'm going to work my way over to that podium. And Chet, if you don't mind, there is a PowerPoint already up on that computer. If you could get that up on the very bottom, I think. If you go down, you see the PowerPoint there. That's it. Thank you. Chet, let me know when we're ready. Yeah, all right. I think we're probably good.
Brett, can you just give me a heads up that you can see the presentation as a presentation?
Yep, looks great. Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chet. I appreciate you doing that. Good evening, everyone. This is the first round of the superintendent's budget for next school year, this fiscal year 25. We have a nice image on the screen there, a nice aerial shot of both schools. It's really quite beautiful. Wanted to let you know that my administrators will be presenting part of this presentation tonight. And I just point out that what you'll see in your packet is this PowerPoint presentation followed by some numbers. And one of those sheets, the first sheet is like a summary by object. And then there's two versions of the complete budget, one of which is sorted by the actual dollar amount, and it's by largest to lowest increase. So you'll see the largest increases at the top, and then at the very bottom, you'll see the most areas, the most savings or least increases or actually decreases. And then the other version is simply by object. So you'll see like all salaries together, all supplies together. And certainly we were willing to give you the budget in any other format you would like it. But we thought to start tonight, it makes sense to give it to you in these two ways. So let's go, Chet, if you don't mind just going to the next slide. Just to remind you that we are one district, pre-K through 12, and our district mission is preparing all students to take their place as culturally and globally competent citizens. District vision, as a learning center of excellence, North Stonington Public Schools is committed to preparing literate, collaborative, critical thinkers and problem solvers, empowered to embrace and successfully pursue their passions and talents. These are some of the skills that we're developing in the students: analysis, collaboration, communication, literacy, and then respect, responsibility, and resilience. These are important life skills for now and later. And let's go to the next slide. And I just want to point out that we are a great school system. There's been a lot of really good work happening. You know, we have a whole goal on innovative instruction, the elementary school specifically. And one way they're doing that is they have a STEAM initiative that the North Stonington Education Foundation funded, and now we support that in our regular budget, hopefully, although you used non-lapsing last year. We have the ECC Diversity Council work led by this district, and other districts really benefit from that. You hear it in a fan statement at athletic events. And, you know, Kristen St. Germain actually did a presentation for CAS on this and how to run this kind of initiative. The Senior Capstone Project and the pathway opportunities for kids at Wheeler are outstanding. We continue to form partnerships with community organizations. Our scores continue to be impressive. I don't know if you know it, but last year's scores on third grade math were highest in the whole state of Connecticut. And we also had some really high math scores in grades 5, 6, and 7, and the highest grade 8 scores in the region recently as well. And I don't need to remind you, but I will, that we're the first district in the state of Connecticut to be an official candidate for district NEASC accreditation. And I probably don't need to remind you of this too, but I will, that one of the major foundational elements for accreditation is having a written curriculum in a common format throughout the whole district. All right, so it's really important work. That curriculum work is vitally important to this process. Let's go to the next slide and just a little bit reminder about what are our goals. You know, we have 3 goals, and they're actually, we list them at the top of your Board of Ed agenda, the summary of them. It is basically, we want everybody to feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging, innovative instruction, and efficient and transparent processes. And we are really serious about that. And in fact, administrators were evaluated on that, on their evaluation. And I know the board is evaluating me on that as well. And my reports are based on that. When we meet, we have agendas that are organized by these 3 goals. So it remains a focus, and we hope that these goals will remain a focus. We are developing a new educator evaluation system with these goals in mind as well, with a PDAC committee made of teachers and administrators. Okay, so we're really trying to align much of what we do with these goals. Next slide, please. Just to remind you how important NEASC is, and there's really not much in the budget for NEASC right now for this next year. The following year, we will have to host a collaborative conference of like 5 people that we'll have to put up overnight and feed them and all that. But that cost would have been the cost that the high school would have had to do anyway. We just bring the elementary school on board for free, basically. And so it's a real benefit. So that last bullet reduces the time and cost of accreditation. That's really true. Actually, I get to go back to Stoughton High School where Peter Nero got his teaching start. I'm going there in April, over April vacation, to lead their decennial accreditation visit. Because I led the collaborative conference a couple years ago, right before I started this job. And so they invited me back to chair their decennial visit, which is over 3 days. It's like a Sunday to Wednesday kind of thing. So it really is important. And I got to tell you, at the chairs workshop this summer, they had up there like all the New England states, and Connecticut came up, and North Stonington was on that slide, and we were the only ones on that slide. You know, so it's a big deal. This is a big deal, and I appreciate the board's support and recognition of it being a big deal. And it's gonna really help align our curriculum work from the younger grades right up to high school. It's gonna help with professional development. Our whole vision of a graduate, it's gonna be a common document through the whole district. So there's a lot of benefits to this. And there are some things in the budget, like curriculum coordination that is really important for this. And we have some ideas, and we're still developing the ideas of how to actually reallocate funds within the budget to even increase that, because next year we have 1 year to get ready for that collaborative conference. And we want to impress. We want to impress. And when they say, do they have a written curriculum in a common format? We want them to say, we meet that standard, versus they do not meet that standard. A lot of schools that go through the process do not meet that standard. It's the most common standard that's not met. But it would be really impressive if we met it. And I think we're really close. With a little extra push in curriculum, I think we can do it. Let's go next slide, please. And I'm going to invite Mr. Salino up to talk a little bit about North Stonington Elementary School. You can come right here if you like.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? First, I want to start off by thanking the board for their past support. As you know, you guys, your work with the collaboration through the town, through the steep grants to get us that new beautiful blacktop that we have. We were very grateful for that. And then, of course, your support of our playground that we are in the process of getting that all finished up. So we appreciate that. Our budget is committed to still delivering the excellent educational experiences that our kids have been used to and the emotional support that we know that they need. As we look at this budget here, the first thing that we're looking at is our science supplies. So we're anticipating piloting of new science materials. Our current 6th grade teacher has a new program that she's going to be implementing, and part of that purchase for this year is purchasing of science kits that we'll be able to replenish for a much cheaper cost down the road. But this is the first year of those. So we'll be starting with those science. And also, as we are updating our science curriculum, we're expecting to do some piloting in the next year as well. So in the year coming up for our K through 5 science. Our inter-reading program, as you know, the board approved our inter-reading program last year. Graciously, you guys bought those materials for us with end of the year funds. Through our thorough implementation plan of this pilot, we've really kind of landed on what we feel is really necessary in order to implement this program with fidelity and to give us the best outcomes for our students. So what we're putting in for the budget this year is now for those consumables and also for the online licenses. So that's all we're looking to add from that. And the rest of the program that we feel what the board has purchased, we were able to maintain those materials, a lot of the books and all those sorts of things. So we don't need to get those replenished for next year coming up. And then we also realized that there were some parts of that program that we bought that are not giving us the results that we feel that are really beneficial to continue on with those. So at this time, we're willing to let some of those things go. As Troy had alluded to, the NEASC accreditation and curriculum work. So we'll continue our work with our reading as that goes into year 3 next year. This year we're in our year 1, so we're really just we're in year 1 of our math and our science. So we're looking at what we have and then maybe what we want to use. So looking into next year, we're going to be looking to do some piloting of some new materials so that we can decide what's going to be the best for our math curriculum as we move forward with that. One of the things that we would like to add is we've had a second math interventionist who's been funded through ESSER grants for the last 3 years. This has proven to be super helpful to our students. I think as you saw our math scores between grades 3, 5, and 6. It's really beneficial to have a second person helping with that math intervention. So that's something we would like to move into the budget. And then I'd kind of like to get a little more creative with our other math interventionist, Mrs. Scanapieko, who really has a wealth of knowledge and really shines when she's able to work with other teachers. So part of what I would like her role to do would be to shift to halftime intervention with the kids, and then halftime in a coaching model. So as we start to pilot and implement some new math programs looking for more innovative instruction, Deanna would be able to be in there to model for teachers, to provide them feedback, to give them more guidance in real time. It's one thing that's come out of our reading program that teachers really felt like that they were looking for. It'd be great if we had somebody in here kind of assisting us with this implementation, giving us feedback and those sorts of things. So if we could do it with math, I think that would really benefit. And then, of course, we're going to continue with a professional development for our innovative instructional practices. And our student well-being is still something we keep a focus on. This year, thanks to the board, we were able to add a full-time school counselor. That has been a fantastic addition for us. Our school counselor has pushed into, and continues to push into every single classroom, and she gives them instructions on resilience, goal setting, and growth mindset. So it's really great that she's able to meet with every classroom, every student, multiple times a year on these core values. In lieu of I should say, not in lieu of, but in addition to the work that she does with her small group work and with the other students who have that need. So having that second full-time person has been fantastic. And then recognizing the importance of our kindergarten paras, that's really aided with that smooth transition of our youngest learners into that transition, their first full year of school. We're looking to add, those have been ESSER funded. We're looking to put those into the budget as well. And then the one last little bump that we have in there, it's very small, but as for our Veterans Day Assembly, this was funded through an NSEF grant this year. It was very successful. I think it really brought a sense of community and pride to our school. We were so grateful to host those veterans and to be able to thank them properly for what they've given to our country. And it's something that we definitely continue we want to continue year to year. And through the NSEF grant, I know that the kind of this stipulation, I should say, is that, this is something that gets added on through our budget, that we can't go to the NSEF for that every single year. So we're looking at just a little bump of that so we can continue that celebration. And that's pretty much what we're looking for this year. Questions at the end, I guess.
Okay, so we're going to have Principal St. Germain come on up, talk about Wheeler.
I do want to start and echo what Rob just said about what you guys gave us last year with the addition of the social worker. At Wheeler, it has saved us. I'm going to be honest, we received a pretty big influx of students from other towns this past year for various reasons, moving here, tuition, whatever it was. But if we did not have that full-time social worker, we would be in trouble right now. I mean, we are really seeing a lot of support needs at the middle high school level right now. Kaylin Sorter has been doing a fantastic job. That in combination with the support of the alternative program has been really allowing us to give our students what they need. So we want to just start with thanking you for that, because it has been life-saving for us at this point. So right now in your hands, I just gave you our mission and core value statement that we have been working off of since our last accreditation visit in 2014. Rob is actually doing this same work with his staff right now, creating a very similar document that aligns pre-K-12 in our district for the first time ever, where we have very similar academic expectations, social civic expectation. But I want to stress that everything that we do, it is kind of under the umbrella of what you're looking at right now, including our budget needs and supporting of our students. So obviously, if you look at our mission, the biggest line that I think should stand out is that we're preparing our students for a changing, complex world, and so that they can be successful in whatever path that they choose after high school. The numbers aren't lying at this point. College numbers, about 54% of students who are going to college right out of high school. We have a large group of students now that are actually exploring career opportunities because they're not sure what they want to do. So instead of just dropping into a college, they're taking that gap year and they're really exploring. So what does that mean for us? It means we need to make sure we're providing all of our students with programming that fits those needs. So one of our biggest emphasis each year is to continue to increase programming that allows students hands-on experiential experiences outside of the school setting. Whether, it's our work with the Westerly Ed. This year we added the EB boat program. We had opportunities for students to actually go and experience all the trades that General Dynamics offers to them and try each of them out, and then be able to make a little bit better, more informed choice of, I really like welding. I really did not like ship fitting, whatever that looks like. So we look for every opportunity to bring in those community connections. And as something as simple as the elementary school next door, our education pathway, we had a young lady who started today, actually, in the art classroom. She's interested in art, she's interested in education, and what a perfect opportunity to also give back to the elementary school by placing her in classrooms. So those pathway opportunities are starting to expand. So we now have engineering, business, and education. And then we front load our program of studies with classes that are relevant to those areas. So it's not just about the internship. education pathway students are in children's literature, children's psychology. So they're really getting a small taste of what that field looks like before they make that huge commitment. I think this is what I want to do, but then oftentimes you hear it's not what they thought. So we think these opportunities are really important. It does support our tuition movement as well. So the other increases that you are going to see in our budget have to do with those academic offerings that I just talked about, but also the increased athletic opportunities. Our sports programs right now, they're thriving. We have so many different opportunities for students who come to Wheeler, whether it is co-op football, wrestling, swim, girls and boys ice hockey, indoor, outdoor track. That is probably one of the bigger pieces of our budget this year. Last year we were co-op with Griswold. It was so successful. We have so many more kids. They actually are their own team representing Wheeler this year. We're making it work, and now they would like to do an outdoor track team. Griswold, we have a great relationship with another school, which I love. I think we have a lot of co-ops with Griswold, but we have students going to St. Bernard's, NFA, all kinds of different collaboration and connections happening. And it's bringing other students to our school, but more importantly, it's keeping our North Stonington students in-house, and they're not leaving us like they used to leave us. So that has been one of the increases that you'll see. Professional development, yes, our staff really wants to explore those opportunities that were not available to them for a while, understandably so. But we really want to move towards this innovation. We have to make sure we're allowing our teachers to experience that training necessary to make that shift in their own classrooms. And then some of our consumables increased a little bit this year in the areas of art, tech, ed, and science. And these are just course offerings. I mean, our art program is thriving. We have so many students that are wanting to take pottery classes and a lot of these higher level classes that do require obviously increased costs. Our materials processing classes back. Our kids are using the wood shop. And these are areas, if you look at those pictures, our kids are going in so many different directions and they're figuring out what it is they want to do. And they now have an avenue to do that at Wheeler. So we're just grateful for the support that you guys always give us. But honestly, those are really everything we do is about preparing our kids for what comes next. And for them, what comes next is could be college, but it could be a job. It could be a gap year, but we want to make sure that whatever it is that we have given them the tools so that they can be successful. And questions, anything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Christensen is now going to present student services.
Hi, everybody. Yes, we can go on to the next one. Thank you. Oh, we kind of can't see Molly because of the box, but she's up there in the corner. Oh, perfect. Want to make sure everybody could see her. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about some of the shifts for special services and kind of what that looks like moving forward for us. We really want to focus on maximizing the impact of the resources that we have here and really continue to ensure that we're giving the highest quality support to all of our students across the district. And this kind of just looks at shifting some of our funds that we've kind of used in the past. So one of the biggest shifts that we're kind of looking at is kind of reducing some of our reliance on some of the outside contracted services that we've previously contracted with. That kind of looks like the BCBA, so board certified behavior analysts, we've contracted usually for those services. So now we're kind of looking to make that shift to have somebody be in-house. Again, as we've talked about, the school social worker and the school counselor have been such a huge help with a lot of the social emotional needs that we're seeing of the students. And if we were able to have somebody in-house here to support those initiatives, that would really, really help us here. Not only that, they can help with tier 1 support in the classroom. They'll be managing behavior intervention plans for students and really be able to support behavior with students and working collaboratively with the school social worker and counselor. Another shift we're looking to make is kind of to give an opportunity to some of our paraprofessionals to increase some of their professional development learning and kind of look at bringing, we had presently contract outside for RBTs, which are registered behavior techs. And so looking to provide that training for paraprofessionals here in-house so that they could then fill those roles for those positions. And with doing those two things, we would really save around $150,000 per school year versus contracting out really You know, again, it's not just about the cost, but I mean, really building the capacity of what we have here. We have a lot of people in district who have a lot of great skills and do support students. And I think that that's just a really great benefit of being here. The next thing is bringing back students. So we've had several students that have come back from outplacement programs. You know, it's just been a really great thing to see these kids who have been here before with us, who are back to see familiar friends, and they're doing so well. And it's so great to see that we're able to support them here with all of the needs that they have. It's been really special. And again, we're able to really support their needs with all of the things we have in place here now for them. And then the last thing here is looking at enhancing our alternative education program. Right now, we have 12 students in the program, and what's really great about it is there's just lots of different opportunities for flexible pathways for students. It's not just kind of one size fits. We look at the student and we say, what does this student need? Some students are kind of in a hybrid model. They come over here and they take some classes over here, but then they're also at Wheeler taking classes. So we really kind of use it to meet the students where they're at. Additionally, I'm always excited to talk about Molly because I think I get my therapy every day when I come over here and I get to see her. But she really is an integral part of the program over here as well. I go walk into the class and she's sitting on the couch with kids, snuggling while they're doing their work. It's just an additional benefit to the students here as well. So really, these shifts are really gonna, I think, boost all of the special services here we have in North Stonington and really, you know, build our capacity of our staff here. You know, and then we can just continue to give the personalized care to all the students that we have here. And thank you for your continued support. We appreciate it.
Awesome. So on the lines of efficiencies, I'd like to address technology on the next slide, please. So you may recall earlier in the school year, we had Greg Pont do a presentation on technology and letting us know that all these things are about a decade old. All those things are about a decade old. These things, I don't know why they're still working, but they're about to stop working. And so Bill, Greg, and I got together and really tried to figure out, okay, well, you know, what should we be doing with technology moving forward to be a modern school district, to be up to date? And that's not necessarily just replacing all your old stuff that you had a decade ago with technology. So when he did his presentation, he did what we asked. Give us a state of technology, tell us how old it is, tell us how much it would cost to replace it. Okay, so there's no way we'd ever have that kind of money. Okay, so we have to be realistic. But in being realistic, we can be optimistic about the future, all right, and move in a direction we should be heading anyway. Okay, so here's 3 major things that we're going to do, and we're going to have to let the teachers know this. Nothing's changing overnight. Okay, however, currently we pay for two computers per teacher, basically. They have a desktop, okay, and they have a laptop. The desktops are old. We're not going to replace them. Okay, once they die, it's over. Okay, now there's just the laptop. And you can have a docking station to hook up your interactive whiteboard, okay? You can use the desktop as long as it works. When it stops working, we're not paying to repair it or anything. It's a decade old, okay? So that's going to save money. We're not just looking to replace. The other thing is there's classroom printers, okay? When they die, it's over. Okay, there's a different way. There's copiers that we lease, and they can be printed too. Okay, we can also have some satellite printers at some point to make it more efficient for teachers. We want to keep efficiency of teaching in mind as we transition this. But again, it's not overnight. People, if they have a working classroom printer, they can still use it. But we're not going to pay to repair it. We're not going to replace it. Okay, so overall, Okay, so we don't have this big technology expense to get us up to speed. Okay, so we're becoming more modern. All right. The other thing, Greg talked about the large expense of replacing servers, on-site servers that store files, old emails, teacher work, all kinds of storage. The modern way is cloud storage. Okay, it's not replacing ancient servers at a huge expense. Now, we're going to keep our servers going while they're going, but we're going to start transitioning to cloud storage, as most schools are doing, most businesses are doing. Okay, and ultimately, yes, that's going to cost us some money for cloud storage, but we already have Google account we're paying for, and we have lots of storage there that we're not maximizing. I know I'm keeping all of my files in the Google document. It's not on the physical server. What did I call it? The Google? All right. Yeah. Sometimes I call it Google Monkey instead of Survey Monkey too. But anyway, so it's just a different approach to technology. So yes, there's some money for technology in the budget. And one of the things that's going to be an annual expense, which I really think needs to stay there, and you can't be pulling it out. You can't be saying, we're going to use end of the year money when we'll take it out of the budget for next year, or we're going to use non-lapsing. It needs to be in there, and that's the Chromebooks. One-to-one initiative. We can't play around with that. Okay, that has to happen. That is a modern approach to budgeting for technology, and we can't touch it. We got to have it in there. And we also have to have some technology in there to replace laptops that give out, because a teacher, we need to be able to give them a laptop, right, to teach with. Okay, it's the modern way. They could take it home. They could do work home. It's hard to drag a desktop home. No, it can be done, but it's a little awkward. And when the sidewalk's slippery, it's even hazardous. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Just to point out, we're not declining. We have NASDAQ do this enrollment study for us each year, and we're relatively stable. The first column is the current year. These numbers do not include our pre-K students or any tuition kids from out of town. So if you add about 60 kids total to these numbers, that's about where our enrollment would be and what it's projected to be over the next 10 years. So if anybody's wondering, our enrollment declining? No. Okay, next slide, please. There's challenges in putting a budget together. And one of the major ones is the cost of the employees. And most of them have recent contracts that were settled, and the board accepted those contracts. And they were done over the last couple of years, and decent increases were agreed upon. So just looking at the employment contracts and health insurance alone, just looking at those alone, and if you look, you don't have to look at it now, but when you look at the summary of the budget we gave you, just looking at those two alone would be the total increase we're proposing for this entire budget. It's equivalent to just paying people what we promised to pay them. The total increase for this budget, the 4.51%, would be just paying what we promised to our employees and not laying anybody off. All right? However, there are other challenges, okay? But you've already heard about some efficiencies. Some other challenges is, yeah, we got to budget more for electric for the elementary school. We know that. We did find some savings, and Bill answered Alex's question. There was something like $35,000 for gas it's going to make it not so bad, right? Building maintenance costs. We've been spending a lot on that, and we have to make sure we budget responsibly for what we project, right? You don't want to under budget, because we have an obligation to maintain these buildings, fairly new buildings. And yes, you've heard we're staying on top of it now. We're in good shape, but we still have increased social, emotional, behavioral needs of students. Okay, but we're looking to improve that. And what you heard from April is we're going to improve that situation and save money by having a BCBA on staff and having some of our staff trained as RBTs. Okay, so I told April she should be wearing a cape because she's the hero tonight. If we didn't do any of these things like saving money in special education or having a different approach for a few other things that we'll get to, I'd be presenting a budget of 6.7% tonight. 6.7% is what I'd be presenting to you tonight. Okay, but it's because of the work that we've done to try to be efficient that we got it down to 4.5, which again is equivalent to just paying the promised contracts of our employees. Okay, so just keep that in mind when, you know, if we're asking to go lower than 4.5. Let's go to the next slide. So you heard about adding the indoor and outdoor track, or relatively minor. We did have a really nice donation of $3,000 last year to get the anonymous alert system going, but now we got to maintain that, and that's $2,500 a year. All right, so that's part of the budget that's in there. You heard April talk about the BCBA and the RBTs. You heard me talk about the need for curriculum and instructional coordination, and we are talking about how can we reallocate within the budget by not adding to actually beef that work up in preparation for the NEASC visit in fall of 25. We have to deal with the athletic director. We believe we can reallocate money from equivalent to what's in this year's budget to make it happen. And there's a couple ideas that we're playing with, but we got to find the right person or people to do it, right? So that's in process. And at some point, I may come to you with a staffing chart that includes a lot of the changes, but some of it is really kind of up in the air about what that'll look like. So let's go to the next. And I do want to point out that we talked about this last year in a lot of different areas about collaboration with the town, and I think it's worth mentioning because I think it's impressive. And we not only had one steep grant for the elementary school blacktop, but now the town included us in a second one that got approved for the irrigation, right? So that's in process. We continue to bring tuition revenue in to the town. There's a community support hallway now with the giving closet and food pantry in the same hall that can be accessed from that door to increase privacy. And Bob Carlson was really passionate about making that happen, and we worked with him, and it was really a collaboration. This room on the other side of this wall is going to become a testing and training center that can also be used for meetings. And Greg Pont actually had the idea. He wrote it up, shared it with the administrators here. They all loved it. I talked to Bob about it. Bob liked the idea. It could be the firemen can come and do training on NIMS training, which is the National Incident Management System. People that want to get a boater's license can come in and take a course. Kids taking AP English literature exam could take it here. There's going to be like 10 workstations. We could have our Infinite Visions training that we're hosting here for other towns this springtime, do it in there. And we're going to have one proctor station, okay? And it's going to be around the perimeter, these workstations. And there's still space in the middle for tables and to have a meeting. So it really doesn't even take away from the function of the room, it just enhances it. So I think it's a really great example of collaboration with the town. It's going to benefit school and town community. And lastly, and thank you to Judy mainly and your work on this, but we ordered the equipment for the traffic signs yesterday. Okay, and you approved that from your now lapsing fund in the last meeting. So that's been ordered. Let's go to the next slide, please. And just to remind you, I have the slide here and I'll take your feedback at some point if you want to keep this slide in here for like when we get the Board of Finance and all that. But it's to point out like some of the really good decisions that you made about spending non-lapsing funds. What we've done, you see the traffic signs are actually listed there in the bottom of the second column. And then the future is the irrigation and some other things that we may be spending some of that money on in the future. Let's go to the next slide. Just to point out, this is over budget increases over the last 10 years. And if you average all these numbers, you get 2.23, which is not an unreasonable number if you look at it. I know last year I talked about the year of the bump and, you know, and I was serious. I really thought it was just a bump, but you know, I was wrong. It's a plateau. We're up and it's a plateau. It's a level surface we're at. It's not a bump. Okay. We're at 4.51. And like I said, if we just paid for the promises to our employees would be at this percent of 4.5. Let's go to the next slide. Someone asked, what is the impact of grants? So I just did this slide. I can do it in other ways if you want, but these are the major grants that we get. IDEA, the special ed grant, that's the amount we get. Title 1, 2, and 4. Title 1 is basically, you know, based on the percent of reduced and free lunch. Students usually use that money for like interventions or pay for a salary for interventionists, that type of thing. Title 2 is professional development. And Title 4 is more for like innovative type, like new kind of programming that you are going to put in. Okay, so if we didn't get any of these grants and we added this amount, this total amount of money to our budget, I'd be asking for a 6.4% increase. So that's one way to look at the impact of having the grants. Okay. But certainly I'm willing to do it in any other way. And let's go to the last slide. And just to point out the opportunities and what happens here in the school district, and to remind us that, you know, it's really about the learning and the relationships. And that's not separate from budget, right? When we say paying fulfilling our promise to pay the people what we agreed to pay them would be 4.5% alone. And yet we presented you some ideas and some savings that not only don't increase that 4.5%, okay, but we do some things even better and more modern within that. I think it's a very reasonable budget. I'm actually quite proud to be able to present these to you. I'm really happy that the alternative ed program has been so successful. And I think that's huge, not only for individual kids, but and families, but for our budget, it's huge. I guess I'm going to leave it at that for now. It might be that you need to dig into a lot of the numbers here to come up with some questions, and we could really get into answering a lot of questions next time. I mean, I'm willing to answer some questions tonight, and my administrators are as well. But I think it's a lot to look at. And we will have a budget narrative for you at some point with some more detail and more description. But like I said, some ideas are still we're playing with up in the air, like the athletic director and a few other things that we want to try to lock in before we say it's going to be this way.
Questions for Troy or the administrators?
Do we want to go around maybe and just? So I was just curious, a couple of quick things. First off, I love internalizing the BCBA. It kills me every time when we see our financial reports and it's discussing when you see the amount of money that we're putting out and the idea that we can hire somebody and have them in-house, I think is amazing. For the RBTs, are they going to stay on the same paraprofessional contract if they move to an RBT, or is that moving to a separate thing?
We're thinking that the job description would be so different that would be a separate thing.
Okay. And timeline for training in terms of in-house regarding that RBT piece, do we have some idea of what that looks like?
We get it done before the school year, right?
It'll be this school,
This could be summer training in preparation for the school year.
okay. And so if it doesn't fit within the contract, is that like, we're gonna have a memorandum of understanding that's gonna come under the MEU, is it MEUI that we have on that, is right?
Yeah, we haven't figured out if it would be part of the para contract. I'm thinking it would not be part of the para contract because the job is going to be so different than what paraprofessionals do. And the training required is going to be so different, and the pay scale will be dramatically different as well.
Thank you.
They'll get paid more than a paraprofessional. And that money comes from savings from tuition, outplaced tuition, transportation, and all that. So that's when we say reallocate.
Oh, no, I still think it's a wonderful idea. I'm just trying to figure out if it's going to cause contract issues, if there's going to be because I know that
Well,
that's
If it does.
been the case in other districts that
Yeah.
I've heard of. And so just trying to figure out
Yeah.
what we're going to be looking at, if we're going to be setting it up in that place, or if it's going to cause, you know,
Yeah. Well, hopefully it doesn't cause issues, but if it does, we'll deal with them.
I don't really have anything right now. I think I need to digest the numbers first. The only thing is and I know we've talked about this in the board in the past, like I would just love to see more language in the foreign language in the elementary school, but that's it.
Rob, can you take care of that, please?
So I'm willing to add more.
No, it was a great presentation. I appreciate all of the admin and yourself for putting it together. Obviously, just need time to kind of dive into the details, understand them, and
Yeah.
see what those impacts do to the, obviously to the programming here, and also echo Jamie's comments on the language. It's been kind of a goal for me for many years to see that in the elementary school. Love to see somehow we finagle that. But anyway, great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all for the presentation. I don't know how much more fine tuning you're going to do. I imagine there are some things that need to be expanded here as we continue. I'd love to see a slide sort of dedicated to the tuitioning kids.
Yeah.
Over the last, because this will be our 4th year, right, that we're coming into, so we should be fully filled. I'd like to see how many from each year and the contribution back to the town for those years. I think it's important that people see the program fully realized next year and how it's grown.
Yep.
Troy, you and I have talked about this, but I'd love to see some slides dedicated to the impact of the things that we added next year. So April, you talked about some of that stuff in your one slide. I think it would be great to really dive into some of that stuff because I think it might be nice to close that loop for everyone else, for the Board of Finance, then hopefully for the town, about what they funded last year and what that's meant. Maybe some numbers in terms of the savings and special services, because I think that's really powerful. Maybe anecdotally, you want to talk about the impact of the alternative ed program. But I mean, if you have more quantitative data, that would be great too. I think it's wonderful. Number of kids taking advantage of the wood shop. I know we talked about the kids that would likely take advantage of it, and it seems to be really vibrant. It would be awesome to talk about how many kids are taking advantage of it. And then I know we touched on it in this presentation, but the real impact of the kids receiving the extra help from the social workers. So I think those are the big things that we really talked about adding last year, and I think that would be great to talk about this year, especially as you start to create the narrative that you want to grow that alternative ed program more.
Yeah, and I know we touched on a lot of that throughout, scattered kind of through, but maybe we
Yeah.
could have it more direct on a slide and say, here's the three major initiatives that were supported last year, and here's the impact. I think we could do that.
And then in terms of non-lapsing expenditures, I know we talked about the banner brackets. Did we actually buy those?
Yeah.
Bless you.
Banner brackets, yeah.
We bought them?
Yeah.
I thought we
they're
just
up.
talked about them.
They're
Oh,
up.
Great, okay,
They're up, yeah.
fabulous. Thank you. That's all I have.
And they're not broken yet, right? Right.
That's great.
I just need to take a little time to look at the numbers as well. I came in a little bit late to the presentation, so I want to make sure that, I'll come back with questions next time that kind of address my concerns once I get to kind of crunch some of those things. Thanks. But nice job overall. Thank you.
My questions are real general, also not line itemed. Do we have any measurable impact of the emotional learning changes now that the counselor and social worker have been on? I'm sure you have. If you could share any of that data, I think, again, to Steph's point, that would be really helpful. I'd like some kind of report out, not necessarily just around budget, but on what's going on with the tuition kids that are coming in. How is that program working? We've talked in the past about if we ever have to add staffing to support those kids, that is actually an expense that the other districts pay. So if we're looking at a BCBA and an RBT, if they're going to be being able to have those services, can we bill out some of that cost? Because that is now adding staffing to support some of those students. What was the other thing that I was going to ask about? And then I definitely would like to know more about the AD piece, how that's going to come into play, hopefully before we have a final budget. And then the Chromebook 1-to-1, is that still that was initially rolled out to be for high school only? Is that still the plan? That's what was approved? Is that what we're doing, or are we making that more of a school-wide program at this point?
Yes, it was, and then we had the pandemic, and then we kind of had to get very creative. So I will say our middle school is 1-to-1 right now, only because those first 2 years we took those devices back and we were able to put them down in the middle school. So I would say our building is, yes, as far as plan for the future, we talk about that all the time. Rob's talking about as well as 6th grade, using those Chromebooks because they have been, and to take that away from teachers who have been planning that way and building everything through that would be challenging. We've gotten creative with using the devices that have been returned. But again, at some point that isn't going to be an option because the next group, they're 3 years old. So, and we can be creative. We can look at options too. But yes, we are, I would say 1-to-1, but can that sustain? I'm not sure. It's going to obviously depend on.
All right,
the
so
tech
we are
budget.
looking to maybe expand that permanently then, instead of just as a. Okay, all right. So I don't know if that's something that we have to approve, since we did approve the 1-to-1 differently before, that we might want to address. And the same with approving the new science and math over at the elementary school. I know it's just piloting right now, but just to kind of keep us on policy for that.
So we're just looking now. Yeah, so now we're just looking at what we want to do. So in year one of our writing, all we're doing is looking what we have and looking where our weak areas are. So, but once it comes time to actually, when we have a curriculum that we want to write and put forward, it's going to come before this board, definitely.
That's all I have for right now. Yeah.
Madison?
Madison or Johnny, do you have anything you want to add to the questions?
No, it's up. If you have a question, you can ask for sure. But if you don't, then you don't have to make.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Troy, anything else you want to add?
I think that when you look at the details, you're going to want to just say yes.
Thank you for that parting statement.
You asked.
I did.
Administrators, if you need to go tend to other activities, you could do that. I really appreciate your collaboration tonight. So if you want to stay, you can, but I mean, you're free to go.
Thank you all.
Oh, that's a good idea. Right.
Yeah, does anyone want to make a motion to move that agenda item 6C?
Move it up to the current in the agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could make it 4B.
I move to make agenda item 6C the new 4B.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, for our Wheeler High School, the assessments have ended on schedule, and even though there were snow days, there will also be new student ambassadors taking over for Maddie and I. There will be an application progress, and currently 2 students have applied, and there will hopefully be more. This will happen through February, and the new students will be chosen by March, and they will begin shadowing us through March and hopefully take over in June. Quarter 3 has started, and we are now in semester 2 with new classes. We have materials and woodshop classes again. Winter sports are in full swing. This year we have many new co-ops, girls and boys ice hockey, women's gymnastics, and indoor track. The indoor track students are currently practicing by running up and down the hallways, but they do have access to Griswold track, and we will be utilizing this track for the outdoor season as well. Our girls basketball team is pushing hard this season with only 5 girls on the court and 2 subs, and they are working very hard and staying strong. Our boys basketball team is killing with a win against Waterford, a win against Ledger last night, and a record of 9-3. All of these co-ops are bringing many kids from Preston and Voluntown, because even though we're a smaller school, having these co-ops bring the same opportunities. Juniors and underclassmen are going to begin picking their classes for the 2024 and 2025 year. There are new pathway courses that have new experiences brought into sophomore and junior year through business, education, and engineering. There are also new classes next year, such as Education 101, where admin, teachers, and guidance counselors will be talking about all the ins and outs with teaching. There's also a new psychology class. We currently offer Intro to Psych and AP Psychology, but next year, Child Psychology and Children's Literature will be an option as well. There are 2 seniors this year who will be working in the elementary school for 60 hours of credit with teachers as well.
Thank you very much. Madison?
Okay, for the elementary school, drama club rehearsals for Frozen has started and the cast is set and the production will be set in March. STEAM Week was 2 weeks ago and it was set up by the STEAM committee and Mrs. Schott. There were different winter theme activities tailored to each grade level, and every grade had an igloo challenge where they had to build igloos in groups with different materials, and then everyone in the school was able to look and walk around at all of their work. 6th grade had their DARE promotion, and 2 students, Reese Rose and Michaela Nelson, were chosen to have their essays read. And then tomorrow morning at 9:30 is a parent advisory meeting, and everyone's invited, and they're going to be discussing volunteer work, the in-school improvement team, and anything else the parents would like to discuss. Tonight, right before this meeting, was the social media presentation in the school cafeteria. Friday will be the school's first town meeting where the school will discuss respect, and the PTO fun night is February 1st at the school.
Thank you very much. So I think we can, Madison and Johnny, we would love you to stay, but if you need to leave at any time, you do whatever works for you, okay? Okay. So we're on to our administrative piece here. I think I made an oversight. I should have put the approval of minutes underneath our consent agenda, and I did not. But can I have a motion to approve these minutes, please?
We'll have discussion after this, yes? So
For sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as a consent agenda, I suppose? Is what you're looking for?
No, we can just do it the way it is now. We don't have to move it today to the consent agenda. You could do it however you want.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from October 11th.
I second.
Any discussion?
I just have to look at which ones they specifically were. I can't recall, but I would ask that the references to myself or Lisa Mazzella as co-chairs of a policy committee or as members of a policy committee, it is not a committee. If we had committee meetings and we're discussing things, that would fall under open meeting laws. And in reality, all it is that we are bringing policy to the board as a whole. And so I can't I can't remember, there were a variety of spaces in which that language was used, and I guess I would just.
October 11th is one of them.
Is one of, okay, I was gonna say, I would just request across the board that language just be removed so that it's not referenced as a committee and neither of us are referenced as co-chairs or language similar.
That's a great idea. So with that being said, and with those changes being made, do we want to vote to accept October 11th? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Chat made a motion. Abstain? Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to approve the meetings for the October 25th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Any discussion?
Simply the same if it carries over between
Perfect.
them all.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? November 8th?
I make a motion to approve the November 8th, 2023 minutes.
I second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? December 13th.
Make a motion to approve the December 13th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstain. Thank you. I have no correspondence to report. Troy, do you?
I do not.
Okay, then moving right on to accepting our December financial report. Alex, I know you had some questions. Do you feel like you have sufficient answers?
I guess we can make a motion to approve the December, or accept the December financial reports.
I'll second.
Discussion?
We did have questions, obviously, Bill responded to, and he has some action items to get back to us on some of those questions, but I think the information was adequate.
Chet had brought up last time that we maybe don't need to accept them
Yes.
anymore. Are we going to at some point move away from that or?
So it is on our agenda to discuss tonight.
Okay,
So for today, I'd love it if we could just stick with our process and then we can make a decision later on tonight how to move forward.
okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, one other question. I guess you had an additional pay period in December. Can you explain that? Mm. 2 months out of the year, you get a third, okay.
They get paid every other week.
So it's not bi-monthly, it's bi-weekly, I guess. Is that how you would say it? Gotcha. Okay, I'm good.
Christmas bonus.
Right.
New Year's bonus.
Okay, any further discussion?
I guess my only discussion would be if we're going to be discussing whether or not we should accept financial reports, it seems odd that we're going to accept a financial report before having the discussion as to whether or not we should.
Sure, I'm not sure that the discussion will end the debate about how we want to proceed. I have some information. I think there's a couple of avenues to gather more information. I'd like to hear how the board feels about gathering additional information or changing the policy now. So if you'd rather move that agenda item down, I'm just not sure we come to a place of this is how we're going to move forward for the rest of our at least the foreseeable future. So with that being said, if nobody is terribly opposed to accepting the report, I would love to do that. We do have a motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting the December report, say aye. Opposed and abstain. Thank you. And we don't have a consent agenda tonight. So we will move to Troy's report.
Yeah, all right, so you have my written report, but I'd like to add a few things before I talk about what's in the written report. One is just an update on the kiln. We were able to get the 3 quotations. We did order it. It's going to be delivered tomorrow. So that's a point for our efficiency goal. Unfortunately, earlier this week, we did have a major incident in front of the school with a bus. And 22 of our kids, elementary school kids, were on the bus at the time. I just want to address this in public, just briefly. While I think the investigation, I believe, is still ongoing, I do have some preliminary report that clearly shows that the bus driver was not at fault in any way. Our bus was completely stopped, hadn't even started to turn, was waiting at the red light. It would be making a left turn into the school parking lot, and it was struck by a vehicle coming eastbound on Route 2 that went over the center line and hit the bus head on. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt. And the bus driver was able to, while shaken up, respond very appropriately, and helpfully Mr. Salino went out right away. They evacuated all the kids off the back door of the bus, got them safely into the school. I was really impressed with, there were several volunteers, Judy Main being one of them, who just happened to be there and saw a need to direct car traffic around and into the parking lot of the school. Was really helpful. A lot of the school staff just chipped in and did whatever needed to be done. And it went, I think it went really well. I want to say I was particularly impressed with our emergency services in town, our fire department and ambulance department. And they were just really well coordinated and professional, and had things under control, stayed calm, and directed ambulances from other towns even responded. And some kids were transported after being assessed by the EMTs. I met with Mr. Salino and some of his staff that were directly involved in the incident just this morning to do a debrief meeting and to talk about the situation and the roles people played, the tasks that needed to get done, and then the obstacles that people encountered in trying to fulfill the roles that they were playing. And we did actually identify several things that, while things I think went really well in the school, it's always an opportunity to take a look and say, okay, how could we even be better prepared if there was a future incident? So that conversation's happened, and we will be talking to the emergency services as well and letting them know how pleased we were. And then they may have some ideas for us as well, how might we be better prepared in the future. So anyway, I just wanted to, just to let you know, like, it's unfortunate incident, but I was pleased with everybody's contribution to dealing with the situation.
One quick comment. I know you're going to go through kind of a forensic on what to do better. I noticed, because I obviously had a meeting with you that morning, and when people were using the parking lot as a bypass, some of them were clipping along pretty well to get around the accident and get back on Route 2. So
Oh, wow.
you may want to have somebody there as a, just kind of slow them down a little bit. Because I was trying to get out, and they were, as I said, they were kind of clipping through as a shortcut. So, but anyway, everything else looked nicely done.
Troy, I just want to say thank you for your communication, because I know that we harp on you a little bit about communicating, and I think that how you handled that was perfect. And I know you had a lot going on, but even just to see that communication to us without a lot of detail, we didn't need the details, but just that it was happening, and even a follow-up and more communication, it was just phenomenal. Like, I thought that that was handled really, really wonderfully.
Good.
So thank you.
All right,
But
thank you.
I will also echo what Alex was saying, is like, that parking lot is intense as a parent who uses that drop off. And so I think it also highlights some of the challenges of that kind of whole process, and how can we make it more efficient and safe, I think, with or without an accident.
Right.
Can I just ask a quick question too? I also appreciate all the communication. It was great, but it seems like there's some kind of glitch with our reporting thing. I don't know about everybody else, but like my voicemails start in the middle of the message and then it duplicates. I get 2 texts every time. So like when it comes at 5 in the morning and you get double, and I just don't know if that's something that is just the way that, I'm sure it's just a technology issue, not a Troy issue. I'm
Well,
just curious
it could
about
be
it.
user error. I mean, it's possible. Highly unlikely.
It doesn't seem like a user error to me. It seems like a glitch in the system for some reason.
Um, it, I had noticed that sometimes I do the recording and I'll test it on myself and I'm like, yeah, that's not like crystal clear, but I gotta get it out. So there was one time it wasn't crystal clear, but I'm like, you know what, this is good enough. People need to know. And I just hit send. So there are times where the recording, cause I'm doing it on my cell phone and, and then part of it's on the computer and there's that interaction. It's a bit cumbersome to put a voice message out with my voice. Much easier to just type it and let the robot do the talking.
It's nicer to hear from you.
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying, but yeah, there are some glitches and honestly, there's timing, like I'll send it and then I don't get notice that it went for like several minutes. And I'm like checking because I can look at the data. I can see like how many emails were sent, how many voicemails were sent, how many texts were sent. But those bar graphs, they don't populate right away.
Can you put yourself on the as a receiver?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but then everybody doesn't get it at the same time necessarily either.
Yeah,
And
right.
some people will get the text way before they get the voicemail, before their phone rings,
Right.
and so it's not all in sync. And that is not user error for sure.
I just know the voicemail starts like in the middle of the message and
That-
then loops
That's
back.
because it starts playing his message the minute it picks up.
Oh, I gotcha.
It's
Okay.
kind of like you picked up the phone and started talking. It's not recognizing that it's gone to voicemail.
Yeah, and then it does repeat, and you could listen to me all day, I think. I think it's, well, I'm sure. But yes, I think as I get more comfortable with it, I think some of the glitches may work their way out, but other things I think are just the glitches of the program. So, well,
I would just like to reiterate how nice it is to have your voice as opposed to a computer. I know a lot of schools are going to just the robot voice and having your voice on it. I really appreciate personally, but beyond that, I also wanted to just add to the people who are saying that the communication was really positive. I heard from parents in Preston how impressed they were with the communication that comes from our school when it comes to different incidents and things that are occurring. And so I think that that's a real positive thing, that we're being lauded for communication, as much as we, as Jamie mentioned, tend to harass you about communication. There are many people, and this one was wonderful. The fact that the information got out, everything went through, people heard about it. It was almost immediate that, all parents of kids involved were notified. I think the fact that you put that right at the beginning of the message was awesome because it immediately put people's minds at ease. When I've spoken to parents of the elementary school kids, they were really happy with the way that it all went down. And so kudos to you.
thank you. Okay, so other parts of my report, just that, we did hire a paraprofessional to support the special education program recently. We had a first grade teacher who has assumed the role of school counselor at Wheeler for the rest of the year. That's happened. That's going well. Regarding the kindergarten age requirement, Mr. Salino met with his early childhood team. They developed a process. They communicated the process to families already in his Friday email. And there's like a link to the information on how to fill out a waiver for your child. And it's really a small handful of families that this law affects this year. But those families can just fill out that waiver or that information as Rob stated.
I just make a suggestion, making sure that you get the information out because there are people who still think they're going to be able to waiver in after this year. So just make sure that front and center, they know that this is a 1-year process only.
I'm not actually sure about that. Have you heard that that's the case?
I had heard, that was my
'Cause
understanding that it was.
I
State-
heard that it's
The
up,
state's now changing.
up in
its
the air,
course.
like they
Again.
haven't made a decision on
Okay.
it, but, I know it's been discussed. So I will confirm with Lauren, he'll know what the status is, and if that's the case, we can certainly let people know. But there's no guarantee, I don't think, in the law that it's an annual waiver. But we'll see. I'll look into it more. Innovative instruction, Jane Servideo, she has an impressive resume, if you didn't know. She just added this on there, that she's a master teacher of innovation and intellectual property. And so she will be qualified to train other educators, providing them professional development on things like, patents and trademarks and all of these kind of innovative type intellectual property concepts. So that's pretty cool. So we have a teacher really leading the way in some innovative work. The PDAC committee met a couple times recently to discuss the new educator evaluation system. Needs to be implemented in the fall. And it needs Board of Ed approval, so I anticipate I'll bring that to you in May or June for your approval. It's in development, there's a lot of good work being done, but there's still a lot of work to be done. There isn't a whole lot of guidance that the State Department of Education has put out regarding this, so everybody's trying to create their own wheel at this point. The CEA did put out that's the Connecticut, the Teachers Union, CEA. They put out a sample, which is somewhat helpful. But I think we got to take this as an opportunity to really develop something that's really going to have an impact. And I think our committee's dedicated to making that happen. So that work will continue. We did have a meeting with ACES International on January 10th. It was a virtual meeting. They are able to facilitate international students coming and attending Wheeler. They'll work to find host families and work with the host families. So they take a lot of that facilitation work off of the school and they do it themselves in partnership with us. But they can also do other things, like we may have a teacher actually go to Spain this summer at a program that they run to learn more about what education in Spain looks like, that type of thing. Summer, like professional development opportunity. They can also set up where partner schools where you can either have students visit or teacher exchanges. You can go, send a teacher over there and co-teach for a month, and maybe you get one of their teachers, and just really kind of cool programming that they talk to us about. I'd really like to get started with them, and it might be a little bit professional development. It might be a little bit, hey, can we get a couple kids from, Portugal or Norway or wherever to be part of our student body and enrich the experience of all the kids and them as well. So I'm excited about that. And I think it goes along with our innovation goal. Efficient, transparent processes. Really, we presented a budget and I just wanted to emphasize a couple things. We did talk about athletic director, the BCBA, and the 3 RBTs. That's in there. We don't really have to talk more about that right now because we presented that. But regarding the warranties, we do have electronic copies of warranties. We do have paper copies too. It's in multiple binders. We are finding that the electronic copies are somewhat easier to kind of look through and find what we're looking for. And we now have a system where Randy and Bill are working together when there's a repair to be needed. The warranty is found, and whether it's old or valid is determined, and then the next step is taken. We did have some recent repairs on the roof of the elementary school under warranty, repaired, no cost. All right, so we believe we have the system in place now to check warranties and then use them if they're valid. I wanted to point out that there is on here, there is a draft calendar. there's actually two calendars. One is the current school year, which we updated based on the 2 snow days that we had. So basically, February 20th and May 24th were weather days that we now have converted into student days. So that's reflected on here. And we do have one more weather day, May 28th. So if I have to cancel school one more time, we could not extend the last day of school for one more time. But if I cancel twice, we have to extend, or you decide not to go 182 days and do 181 or 180. So,
Are we discussing this or, oh, okay, so we vote on this, right?
no,
No.
not
Okay,
on the
we're just gonna
current,
discuss.
not on the current calendar.
Okay. Those are, already-
So,
okay, so I
so
guess,
now I'm gonna talk about the next year's calendar.
well, could I?
What, you want to talk about this year's
Yeah,
calendar?
do you mind?
Yeah.
So it's definitely a done deal that what day was that?
Yes,
Yeah.
because you approved it with that. If this happens, then this will happen.
I guess my understanding was that we were going from the end. No, okay. No, yeah,
The
end-
last weather
the
day
end
first.
Weather days, and then moving your way up because it was so close, like, because it's well, I guess, I don't know, January is forever, so I guess it's a couple weeks away, right?
If we have a weather 4 days before the 20th of February, then we have to take February 20th away from a parent. That's going to be even more
Mm,
stressful.
No, I know that's, yeah, I guess my understanding is that we always went from the May date first and kind of worked our way, but if that's not the case.
That's not in my recollection, but I've only
Okay.
been here.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm mistaken then. Never mind. It's fine. I mean, I think it's too bad for those who do have plans in February, but, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay, so next year's calendar, I want to present it to you and just point out some things, and then it just, I know we're not really on calendar
Oh,
right
yeah.
now, but it's in my report. And the only thing I want to point out that's in my report is that when you get to discuss the calendar sometime tonight for next year, you might want to consider that the last day right now on this version is Monday, June 16th. And you could simply make it June 13th for the last day and take February 18th and make it a school day. So I'm going to suggest you might look at that as an option when we get to it in the agenda. Okay, I'm done with my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Troy.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I have a couple of things to report. I met with Judy and we did her new member orientation. I also met with Christine this month and did some transitioning stuff, which was very helpful for me. I am going to be scheduling meetings with each of our administrators and department heads as part of that transition this week. In terms of the status of Route 2 lights, I think it's really important that that I publicly thank Judy for all of her tireless work on this. It was really efficient. So Judy brought it up. We talked about it at the tri-board meeting. 2 days later, we voted to expend the money. Judy then went above and beyond and not only got a quote, but actually got them to say that they would be able to have the stuff in our hands in a week after we ordered it. So that quote went over to Bob Carlson, who had his highway department look at it, make whatever sort of notations about quantities of things that we need, make sure that was going to work for us, approve it, and get it back to us all so that it was ordered yesterday. So I really want to thank Judy as well as Bob Carlson, the highway department, and Troy and Bill for really handling it so quickly. And Troy and Bill also managed to get that order in the middle of the audit that was happening. So thank you for doing that.
Stephanie, did you give them the final number for the signs?
I don't know that will be, they probably have the final number because of the shipping. That was kind of up in
Do
the
you
air,
have the
but
final
I
number?
have like a little 3485 as the estimate. It would be like 150 up or down from there, I think. So far under what we had approved. So thank you all for that. At the Board of Finance meeting on January 17th, the annual audit was presented. And that, of course, is the audit of both the town and the school stuff. It seemed successful. The auditor didn't seem to have marked down that they had requested that we created that financial policy booklet. But we did do it. So they didn't say we didn't do it. They just, when asked about it, they said, oh, we didn't note that, but we did it, so great. Oh, good. You said we did it. Yeah, that's great. Let's see. I had my first meeting with Bob Carlson and Mike Anderson. We met yesterday and it was wonderful. What we really focused on yesterday was the issue that's sort of been plaguing all of us, especially as we move into budget season, which is how do we handle maintenance and repairs at our schools? Obviously, we've had a big year of maintenance and repairs, and we've been talking for a while about who's going to be responsible to do that. So I think that we are on the right path, and it seems as though everyone really does believe that it should sort of mimic a landlord-tenant relationship. So if it's something that you would call your landlord about, then that's going to go to the town. If it's something that is wear and tear in the school or something that sort of our use has caused or things that we need in our school, that's going to be on the school. But it needs to be hashed out even more. So the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen talked about putting together a long-range capital working group that are really going to look at the capital needs in all the departments and figure out the best way to do that. So they have put members on there. So it's going to be Bob Carlson, 3 members of the Board of Finance, and then they want 2 members of the Board of Education to do that. They were going to start that work group in June. What we decided yesterday was, let's pull that work group in, let's form it and pull it in to meet a few times over the next month before budget season and take a look at what that process really needs to be, really create a plan for how we determine that and then what the process is. Additionally, I'm going to bring them what our maintenance and repairs have been since that building was renovated and was built, as well as the costs associated. We'll be able to look at that and sort of pull out, if we were applying that principle right now, what would we have paid for? What would the town have paid for? And that will indicate what the line item that the town will need to fund will look like. So that should be really, really helpful. But I think it's worth noting that everyone knows that this is new and will likely change, but this may help get this rolling for this budget season, which would be really great and help Troy and Bill as they start budgeting for maintenance and repairs. So I spoke with Alex and Christine about sitting as a part of that group, and they have both said that they would. I think that with their professional experience and history on the board and with these buildings, that'll be really helpful. So thank you both for agreeing to sit as a part of that. I meet with Mike and Bob again on the 1st, and we'll have more information for you on the 1st. And then hopefully shortly thereafter, that group will meet for the first time. So I'm really excited about the direction that it's going in. I think that's all I have tonight.
Steph, can I just clarify?
Sure.
You said a capital plan
Yes.
or I feel like this was happening at the tri-board too, where there was confusion
So
between.
it was
So
originally
this is
formed.
the capital, but not regarding the maintenance.
No, it's the same. So it was originally formed as the Capital Long-Term Working Group. And that was going to start meeting, they were going to start meeting after the budget process was over in June. As we were talking about this, Bob suggested that perhaps the same group of people, because they're going to be working together on those long-range plans and identifying what at the school is going to be capital, how do we identify that? What are we going to do about that? He thought that this might be a great group of people, especially sort of looking at who the people were, to really hash out this piece of it. Because while it's not the same, there will be some overlap. So, and it will involve really the same players in terms of the town department and our maintenance department. So, yes, it was originally just the capital planning committee, but they want to bring that group in early, really early, like in the next 2 weeks, to start that work really quickly and then adjourn that committee until June.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't the confusion between.
No,
And
it was
I
really
know Christine's
confusing.
got this because I've heard her having these conversations on these things. So I'm not concerned about that moving forward. I was just
Sure, it's a little
confused
confusing
whether
and I
which-
probably
which
could have explained it better.
pace it. Perfect.
So does that mean that the town isn't putting any capital plan forward for this budget season if they're not planning
No.
to meet till June?
No, that's not it at all. They've got their year one stuff
Okay,
all put together. This is
Okay.
sort of that long, as they were looking at things like, and if you listen to the meetings, it'll sort of, it'll again be much more clear than I'm describing it. But as they're looking at 1 year, it's hard not to think about what does that mean for year 3, year 5, year 10? And so
Right.
this group will sort of push that plan forward
Gotcha.
and figure it out.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
really promising work that's happening. It's pretty exciting. So any other questions about that? All right, well then, let's move into the policy and advocacy discussion. Thank you, Chet and Lisa, who's not here tonight, for going through all of the bylaws and deciding which one of those, which bylaws can sit as a part of this particular group. Chet, do you want to sort of lead this about how you came up with it and what you want to do?
So I have to be honest, and this is I guess what it kind of comes down to for us is that between the two of us, we separately read through the bylaws and we picked out the ones that we considered as relatively benign and somewhat vanilla. And those were the ones that we wanted to sort of look at first and say, hey, listen, these seem, I mean, some of these are things, some of these are more complicated, but I still don't think that they necessarily are going to cause debate. But again, this is personal opinions of myself and Lisa. And our goal moving forward was that any member of the board can pull any one of these bylaws and move it to the other group. So if anyone looks at any of these and says, I would like to have discussion on this, I think that there's something in here I would like to see changed, something needs to be different, whatever it might be. But some of these are things like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to discuss the one about remuneration and the fact that the Board of Ed receives no remuneration whatsoever for our time, but I don't think that that's ever going to change. So, I mean, that's not something that we really need to discuss here. It simply is a bylaw that states we don't get paid. I mean, that's the extent of it. Some of these are far more complicated and have a variety of things. There's stuff within the legal one, for example, with the fact that we are going to have an attorney, but it specifies certain things regarding that attorney and other pieces. If people look at that and they think, hey, I would like to discuss this, I don't agree with the way that we're handling these things, please pull those. I feel like originally what our thought was let's get it all out to the board. I would say that for most people, 5 days before the board meeting is not enough to have gone through these bylaws, taken a look at them and decide. If any changes need to be made to a bylaw, the change needs to be proposed, and then at least a 4-week period of time has to take place between the time in which a change to the bylaw is proposed and the actual action is taken on it. But if no action is to be taken, we can make that movement at any point. So if what we want to do is look at this and say, these have been reviewed and updated in the sense that all the only update is the date of review, then we can move these kind of out of our pile of to do, and it just becomes something that we've accomplished, which honestly, on the policy side of things, is really nice to just see anything going into the we've already accomplished pile. So what I would ask, I guess, at this point, because I don't believe that people have had the time to read, unless I'm wrong, did everybody, hang out this weekend, read through all the bylaws and figure it out? Yeah, everybody, I guess the better question is anybody going to read more between now and next week? No. But I think for myself, I would feel more comfortable with the idea of you all taking these home, I mean, look at them, pull out any singular one and come back to the next meeting and just say, hey, listen, I know you had bylaw 9314 on here. I'd like to pull that for discussion. And then all it will be is we'll do a consent agenda to sort of just do that. Hey, these have been reviewed, so all our bylaws don't say 2007 anymore, but instead they say 2023. We're in 2024. I know that, obviously. But say the current year as opposed to previous years, and kind of move forward with that. Let's see, so one of the things that comes tricky with this that I just wanted to explain as well is that CABE doesn't have a core manual of bylaws, because bylaws are set up differently in the sense of the way, like the bylaws are based on the board. So we as a board, like you can pull any of these. We could decide, you could look at this and say, this is useless. I don't know why we have this bylaw. And we could yank that. And if we have a 2/3 majority of the board, we get rid of it. These bylaws are the way that we run our board, not the way the state mandates us to do things as much as, like, it's much less of that as it is with the policy. And so all these are meant to do is demonstrate how we as a board function. And so CABE doesn't give us, like, if you were to go to the CABE site and look up, oh, I want to see what the new CABE version of bylaw, 9121 is, it won't even be the same topic. There is no process to that with the current way that CABE is set up. And that may be because we set up our bylaws before CABE did. We could go through CABE and go piece by piece, but I think after reading through the bylaws, I feel like they do a pretty good job of encompassing a lot of things. We have some stuff to discuss, but I don't think it's necessary to like start from scratch. So questions for me on any of that? Does that make sense? Kind of the plan moving forward on this? And then we're going to delve into the things that are probably going to, just knowing our board and our enjoyment and discussion, it will take us like, an entire meeting to do each bylaw one by one.
So I'm going to add the bylaws to the consent agenda for our next meeting, where we can just take the ones that we want to leave and I guess update the date.
I would almost say, instead of a consent agenda, that we have it as an agenda item, and therefore what we do is make the motion to update all of those bylaws by date, and then second it, have that discussion, and that discussion, we can remove any that would need to be removed. I don't know if that's different than doing the consent agenda, but with the consent agenda, it feels like it's harder to pull out individual things, and
We
that
wouldn't
way.
have discussion either, so you're right, maybe that's better.
So I think that way we would present it, anybody who wants to pull anything, and again, we are not going to take offense to it. Our goal is to have you all look at it, and I mean, it could be that you dislike, the way they put a period. I don't care. Like, you pull out whatever you want to pull out, right? We don't want to cram any of this at people. It's just, these were the ones that when we looked at them, neither of us reading separately thought there was something that would cause discussion.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments, so.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, not.
Oh, not tonight?
No, just,
Okay.
just updates or questions on.
Yeah, so we will, we'll put those down, we'll pull them out next time and vote on the ones that we can just update. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
honestly, if you wrote it out the exact same way that you have it here, it would
do
just
that.
be vote on bylaws. And then if we pull out whichever ones, like, it can be a motion to approve stated bylaws, and then anybody who we do discussion, we pull them, and then we amend
Yeah.
the motion, and we move forward. I think
That's
that's
perfect.
the
So we'll
easiest
put
way to
that
go.
on the list. Thank you again for identifying all of them. I know you had to read through. A lot.
Right. Well, and again, like, Alex, when you're talking about questions and things with that, what you can do is, any change that happens on it, we would have to pull it. So even if it's the slightest change of wording, we have to pull it because we have to give 4 weeks in between.
Yeah, and we'll want to be able to give it real discussion, and that real discussion would be happening in this meeting rather than the first meeting of the month. So yeah, we can just identify the ones that we want to pull and move forward from there. But I think we're going to be able to make a good dent in them. So that's great. Thank you again. Okay, old business. Accepting, approving, acknowledging, saying we got it, like whatever we decide we're gonna do with these financial reports. So Chet made a really good point, maybe a month and a half ago, saying, I'm not so sure we should be accepting the reports. We used to approve them, we decided not to approve, to accept. And so Chet said, I'm not sure that we should even be doing that. So in looking at what other people around us do, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are approving or accepting their reports. They're getting their reports reported out to them. They are talking about their reports. they're asking questions about their reports, but it doesn't seem like other people are doing what we do. So I think that we could do a couple of things. I can put it out to the CABE chair listserv and ask people what they do and why they do it that way, so that we have some options. There doesn't seem to be a reason why we couldn't just stop doing it. We can do that. Or the last option would be that we reach out to our attorney for his legal position on what we should be doing. But if we do that, it costs money.
Yeah, I prefer that we at least acknowledge, if that's a better term, that we went through 'em. I think that should be the board's responsibility to make sure that budget or items are reasonable as presented somehow. I don't want to.
Well, and when we accept them, then we know that every person that accepts, their name is on. I think if we don't, then it's like, well, I didn't look at that one, or it kind of holds all of us accountable to saying, we looked at it, we agreed with it, we understood, and we moved forward.
we
I mean,
should
I
be
feel like
held
it's
to
a good
somehow.
practice, honestly.
Chad, do you want to talk about why you thought it was not a good practice for us to continue with?
Well, and again, I think that the way that we go through them and the idea that we look at them, we get a presentation on them, we have all of those pieces to them is super positive. And I think that moving forward, it sounds like we're gonna have a whole meeting where it's basically us going through financial reports. So I don't feel like it's shirking a duty in that aspect, because I think that the goal is not to get away from looking at the financial reports. It's the language of the idea of, and I know, like, this was the first discussion when it came from moving away from approving to accepting, was the fact that we couldn't really approve it, because if we don't really understand, I mean, if we don't have all of those pieces and that knowledge of everything that was gone out with it, then it's approving it. Like, we're not saying it's okay to do this. It's already been done. Right? So approval happens before the fact. Acceptance is, we understand that this is what happened this month. And that was kind of the move that we made to the acceptance over approval. But at the same fact, like, if from what I had read, and this was, again, I can't even remember what I was researching, but I was looking up something else in terms of a process we were doing. And it had to do with the idea that it increases the liability on us as a board, because in reality, the only thing that we should be making any action on is the final audit. That audit is the piece where we say, yes, we accept that this is the audit and all of these numbers are correct. And this is the right stuff. And even with that, what we're really doing is accepting that Bill does his work. Because we can question some of those things, but it's still not necessarily have all of that information. So I'm not feeling like super passionate about the idea that we have to eliminate this. It's just, it was funny because when I started reading it, they also said that a lot of times you don't actually accept the minutes either. So there is no motion to approve or accept minutes. All it is that when minutes are presented, the chair would state, all right, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any corrections to be made? And then if people make corrections, then they make corrections and they move, and that's it. There is no actual action taken by the board. And it just has to do, it was a Robert's Rules aspect wherein we default to Robert's Rules, and by Robert's Rules, we shouldn't be doing those things. We can keep doing it, right? We can make the choice to do whatever it is that we want to do. But they're not things that are required within any form of parliamentary procedure or any other aspect.
So I think I'm hearing that at least Alex and Christine want to continue to have some sort of on the record acknowledgement of the reports. And Chet, I'm hearing, I think you saying, I don't think we need to do them, but if you want to keep doing them, I don't really have a problem with that. But just,
It doesn't, I mean, to be honest, when it comes down to it, is do we think that there's actually going to be any repercussions from accepting financial reports during a meeting? I don't think so, right? I don't see any sort of examples of that happening in the past. However, it was given with examples on the Robert's Rules pages and other things that, no, this shouldn't happen, because if it does, then this could happen. But I'm not going to fight it because it's something we've been doing. It's past practice. It's already in there. If we're going to continue doing it, I guess I would just say, let's just make sure we're continuing to accept as opposed to approve.
So do you want me to get some sort of information from other chairs across the state about what they do and why they do it? And then we can decide how we want to proceed, if there's a different word that we're using?
If-
Or if there's a history of why.
If there's people who strongly believe that we need to have something on the record of it, and there's nobody who's actively fighting against having something on the record of it, I think we can call it a moot point and move forward.
It seems like a waste of resources, honestly, Steph, to have to reach out for something like that.
Sure, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
everybody feels like,
I mean, I don't really
We've
care either
exhausted.
way. I just think it's the process that we've always done. In a small town like this, I think it gives us a little bit of accountability to it. At the end of the day, Troy has full oversight of that entire budget and of that entire operation. So we aren't really approving expenses. We aren't saying, yes, it was okay to do that or not okay to do that. We really have no control of the operation of the money. And I don't know if what you were reading was related to Board of Eds specifically. Okay.
I mean, I don't care one way or the other. However, if we're going to devote an entire meeting to going line by line through some of this financial information, aren't we at that point acknowledging that we have seen all this, and that then the acceptance or the acknowledgement or the approval then really becomes redundant, because we're spending an entire meeting on it and we're on record. We have meeting minutes stating that we're in the room discussing these. So at that point, does an approval or an acceptance really matter one iota? I don't think it does at that point.
I don't know. Again, for accountability, I think we should be somehow on record to say at least we acknowledge it or something, rather than just say, hey, we went through it's in the minutes, and you kind of fish through the minutes to say that we had an agreement or we had our questions asked. And, these go to the Board of Finance, so I like to make sure it's vetted properly before we hand it outside for people to critique it. Is also a concern of mine, so, but whatever. If I had to vote, I'd like to have some sort of, or have some sort of say by member on what we do or don't do on it. But I'd like to keep some sort of recognition that we did something on the financials personally.
so am I hearing that Alex is the only person that has a really strong opinion about how we should proceed?
Sorry, I just asked, like, what if we don't accept them? Like, what if we don't have
It doesn't
I
seem
don't
like
get.
it's a big deal at all.
No. I mean, like, what if we actually had we had a vote and we all said, no, we don't accept them?
Yeah, what are the,
There,
What would-
like, nothing
Right.
actually happened.
You're rejecting the financial report.
but I guess maybe we could come up with a common ground of, like a statement maybe of saying, just to summarize it, I don't know.
Like acknowledging receipt and discussion?
Or maybe acknowledging moving it forward to the Board of Finance. Like,
That's kind of what
Oh,
I'm thinking.
Well,
Yeah.
so we're not accepting or approving the report. We are officially moving the report to the Board of Finance.
right.
And that would-
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Perfect.
Because then we can still have a vote, so it'll be on the record, because there
Yes.
always has to be a vote on the record, and it just states that we're all comfortable moving this report. to
Moving the
Board of
report
Finance.
to the Board of
Right at the end
Finance.
of that finance meeting at the beginning of the month, or whatever meeting of the month it is. Perfect.
That's perfect. That was wonderful collaboration. Thank you all. And now I don't have to talk to anybody else about this. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I really have been like really taking this seriously.
It was
Okay.
literally an off-the-cuff comment by me. You didn't have to say. it
Chuck, I
very
feel like
far
I've carried this agenda item 3 times since then. Okay, glad to see it put to bed. Thank you.
When do I send it to the finance? Do I have to wait till you approve it? Because there was a period of time, it might be 2 months before you approved it, and the Board of Finance is saying, well, where's the report?
So thankfully, Bill, I think that what we're about to talk about next, which is our new agenda structure, it's going to be really clear that we're going to be able to do that, and it's going to happen once a month. You're going to have a clear picture of it. So let's move on to the new business of the new agenda structure that was piloted tonight in an effort to streamline, you want to take one and pass it down, to streamline this whole idea and to sort of take that finance committee work and bring it to the larger committee now that we don't have subcommittees anymore. So it's just one page. Sorry, I know. It's fancy paper. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. So this is really a quick draft, and I would love some feedback on it. So the first meeting of the month, we eliminated all of the report outs. So Troy's report, my report. If we have something to add, we certainly can add it to the agenda, but I think reporting just to report maybe isn't the best use of our time. Item number 4 is going to be our facility and finance discussion. I envision it looking a lot like it did at our last meeting, that we'll always talk about the monthly financial report there. Bill will present the report to us. We'll talk about the non-lapsing. We'll talk about all of the other facility things that we need to discuss. And then that'll be the largest chunk of our meeting. We'll use that meeting to approve the policy that we discussed in this meeting. We'll have an opportunity for everyone to comment on future agenda items. And that'll be it for that first meeting of the month, because that facility and finance discussion is going to be long. The second meeting of the month will look a lot, I think, like we did tonight. The presentation, all of the administrative stuff, the reports from Troy, myself, the student ambassadors, and then the policy and advocacy discussion. We can also do new and old business here. I wondered if we could just sort of let a few meetings go by with this format and see which one seems to be much longer than the other, and maybe we can shift new and old business around sort of depending on what we find. I tried to think about balancing this, but I think it'll take maybe a few meetings before we figure it out. And we could do calendar at this meeting as well. Thoughts on this? Does it seem okay to try?
Steph, do you think we should move the student ambassadors report more towards the top? I feel like
Yes.
we've moved it a couple times.
We totally
If we
can.
just keep them up to the top to get them up.
Under
quicker.
presentations.
I do have opinion on it, though. They're here also kind of to learn and be part of the process rather than give you a report and leave. So I almost said no on the vote just because of that. So that's why I just throw that out there. Not because I want to torture them, but no, they're here for a reason, right? So.
Do you think maybe if we leave reports where it is, maybe we have the students go first in case? Alex, I think that's a totally valid point for general sort of attendance at the meetings, but I'm thinking about the times that somebody has like an AP exam in the morning or something like that. I'd like them to have the option to participate and then
Case by
use
case
their
basis.
judgment. Do we want to just move that to 6A instead of 6C so they don't have to?
Well, I would say the superintendent's report and the Board of Ed chair report are the things that we kind of want our student ambassadors present for. What if
Okay.
instead what we did is flip 5 and 6?
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Oh, we could totally do that. Okay. 'Cause I know that we moved
Because then-
presentations up
because-
to the top to get our presenters sort of out.
But
so
this
that we
allows
can-
our student ambassadors to hear our presentations.
Yes.
Hear the reports of the other people, and then it moves honestly, the boring stuff down
Mhm.
below, right?
Mhm.
That sounds great. And then if they're able to stay, I think it's great that they do. But I know especially these two that are here certainly have a challenging course load, are super involved in extracurriculars, and I just don't want to put undue stress on them.
Yeah, I think that just on that topic too, the student ambassadors thing has been, it's a really nice piece. It's a lot, the kids that are gonna step up to do it already do so much.
Right.
It is a lot extra to be like, I just think we need to really consider what are we gaining from that? What are we expecting from that? What value is it bringing? It's certainly nice to see them, but just to have it, I think we need to consider it a little bit more. Maybe it just needs a little more time. This was only the first couple of years that we've had it, but it is one more night that kids that are in a bunch of sports, like you said, AP classes, everything else, just something to consider. I think, maybe old business and new business on both agendas, even if you don't have anything under them. So that you don't have to add them always and then not have them.
Sure.
All right.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, they know what they're signing up for when they sign up to do something like this. There is an entire process. I mean, if you want it for the resume, for the college apps, for whatever it is, you gotta put the work and the time in. And I don't doubt that no, trust me, I'm not saying that they don't, but I think they have to go in eyes wide open and understand the responsibility that goes along with it. And I think that's part of that. And I think that, someone who's just trying to fill things, and I'm not accusing them of doing that in any way, shape, or form, because they're both wonderful, students and.
One of them is my kids.
Absolutely. But I think we also have to treat them like individuals who would have to sit through a meeting with us and to get that experience.
But then maybe we need to make it, I just don't feel like we're drawing much from the position either. Like maybe we need to be incorporating them more or doing more.
I guess I would also say, I would
Right.
hope that what's happening is that they're also going back into the student body and they are the ones who are knowledgeable about the things that are going on and then become leaders within their peers. And those are the people, like, not necessarily that they're coming here and creating a huge change in our meetings, but what they're doing is creating that connectivity with the student body that attaches to the Board of Ed, as opposed to us being an entirely separate piece of things that has no connection to the actual students. It means the students hear our discussions, and when some kid says something like, I don't understand why we do whatever, then they can step up into those spots and voice what all goes into how these things work.
Yeah.
So can we do
Oh,
this?
Sorry, can I just add something?
Sure.
Yeah, I would really like to add or have them be part of that policy and advocacy discussion. And when we did have them involved, I thought, especially when we were talking about the dress code and things like that, I thought that was a really good part of them being here. So I don't know how to reword this, but almost, or reorganize it. If that 7 could maybe, I don't know, do you want to?
7 becomes 5, 6 becomes X.
Or move 5 all the way to the bottom. Like, so it would be 4,
So they stay
6,
longer.
and 7.
I would just flip flop 6 and 5, or 7 and 5, I mean.
Instead of 5 and 6, do 5 and 7?
Yeah, put policy and advocacy up, leave them at reports, and then they don't have to sit around for consent agenda or approval of minutes or anything like that.
Okay, so given that the student ambassador's involvement is not agenda tonight, and it is just our agenda, I do think that it's worth way more conversation, like Christine said about, like, how are we engaging them? And I think that, that you're right, it is sort of, like, how can we utilize them better? How do they get more out of it? And we get more out of the process. So do you think, and Christine, I'm gonna ask you because you're the mother of one of them, do you think it would be okay and comfortable to include them, to make it an agenda and include them? They've been our only student ambassadors. What has worked, what hasn't, where would they like to be more involved? Then we can ask about the places where we think they could be more involved, and they can say, I don't think that'll work, or I think that's a great idea.
Can we come up with those questions ahead of time so that we don't put them on the spot in a
Yes.
meeting? So they have time to.
I
Yeah.
think they would really
Lots of-
appreciate that, especially with them now transitioning it to somebody else.
It seems like a nice way to say, thanks for what you've done. You're pioneers here. What could we do? What could we do better?
Right. What would you like to see more of? And then how can we do that with the next group coming in?
I thought they change out every year. I was surprised to see them back. It's every 2 years, okay.
The original plan was that we were gonna have one junior and one senior. And then what would happen is we would get, it would be rotating. So you would have one person who'd already been here for a year and then another person who was brand new. And I think the difficulty that we had was we had no seniors the first year who applied. What we had was 2 juniors. And then those 2 juniors ended up coming in and staying for the 2 years. And so we kind of threw off our original plan.
I think they're going back to the junior senior thing though, or they're trying.
And we
They're
could talk,
gonna
we could talk about that
They only have 2
then
applicants.
as well. So do you want to do this? Do you want to email just me, not the entire board, questions that you would have for them? I can compile those questions and I can send them to the student ambassadors so they can think about them ahead of time, and then I can add it to an agenda and we can have that discussion. Does that sound okay to everyone? And I will make, for now, I'll make these amendments to the sort of and it really is just a skeleton format for our agenda, and then we can take it from there. Does that work for everyone? Okay, perfect. I'm thinking they would be on this one, the second meeting of the month. Does that make sense to all of you in terms of where we're putting them? Okay, so we'll do it then. And we will move right along to calendar. Troy, do you have anything else to say about the 23-24 calendar?
I don't.
Excellent. We'll cross that off the list. So we are going to go to the 24-25 calendar. Do you want to?
Jamie, did you still have something?
I got confused. I have some comments about the 2024. Or
Well, then
24,
let's
25.
talk about it.
No, next
Oh,
year. I got.
Okay, so let's go on 24-25. Troy, do you have something you want to say about it first?
Just, I want to point out that we have on this draft, 3 professional development days beginning of the year. And the reason for that is because with the new educator evaluation system, we have a need to train teachers at the beginning of the year. So that's why we decided to put 3 days there and have the kids come back on a Thursday, Friday for that week. It would be maybe a nice way to ease into the school year for the kids. That still has the 4 half-days kind of scattered throughout. One of them, the PDAC committee thought it would be good to move to a Thursday in March. So it'd be a half-day on the 6th, and then we have a PD day where there's no school for kids on Friday, just for the continuity of professional development. And also the 7th is a regional PD day in the LEARN's calendar. The other PD day, regional Learn calendar PD is November 5th. So we would match those there. Right. There was no discussion on that with the PDAC committee that looked at this. I think the idea is it was more important to match the regional Learn PD day for collaboration with teachers in other districts, especially our specials teachers that might be able to attend an art workshop with other art teachers and that type of thing. And a lot of districts have that day off because it's also election day. And some of the voting goes on in school, so they have to kind of shut down. But for us, it makes sense because it's like collaboration with the region to have the same PD day. And it's more important to have that and then the day after Halloween, I think.
Can I just make a comment? So I'm coming at this in two hats. So the Board of Ed in me I really think that it's great to have these PD days. I think that they're wonderful and I hope everybody gets a lot out of them. The parent side of me sometimes finds the half days a little challenging, and especially when they're kind of clustered together. So for example, that week of the 4th, so you're there, then you're off, then you're there, and then you have 2 half days. For childcare purposes, it's intense. And same thing, there was another, December is December, right? Because you have the 20th, which we have always off, have that half day. But I don't know the solution. I don't, and maybe this is something we could, before and after school care would really help this situation. I'm just stating, but I don't know if there's a way we could maybe ask both the teachers and the parents, like, is a full day better? Like, is it more effective to have a full day? Or are these sprinkled half days more effective?
Well, sometimes depend.
Yeah, right. No, I understand. It's just the clustering of them tends to be intense
And
for a child.
sometimes depending on who you're bringing in, if it's not an in-house PD, there's an additional cost of a half day is considerably cheaper than bringing in people who work with you for the entire day.
Sure.
So those half days, when you start to do something along those lines, it becomes much more fiscally responsible.
Okay. Well, I may lose this argument, but I just would like us to be mindful of some of the childcare concerns regarding clustering them. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Before and after care would certainly solve this situation.
Do other people, I have a couple of comments about the calendar, but I want to hear other people's comments first. Do other people have comments on the calendar?
I would just like to double check. We don't have anything in the teacher contract regarding the number of days prior to the start of school that we're allowed to have PD.
No.
Okay. I just know, in my personal contract, I know that it can only be 2 days before the start of school. And so like and it has to be continuous. And so it's like one of those things that sometimes shows up in contracts. And so the idea that we're introducing the 3 days, I just, off the top of my head, couldn't remember ours.
My concern is gonna be the same I had last year when we did this, and it's the 5-day weekend from Memorial Day if you don't end up burning those weather days. That's just my concern. I'm not a fan of doing that. I think, to Jamie's point about childcare, that becomes more of a childcare issue, trying to figure out 2 full days. At that point, that might be my non-starter in this calendar again. But it's just that, yeah, but Troy was talking about taking the 18th in February away rather than the one in May. And I would be more amenable to removing the 27th in May rather than removing the one in February. Is the one in February you can make up for some that happens in December, January, right away. And then if something then happens after that, then you have it. I'd also say, just as a point of order, you might want to start blocking off and highlighting June 19th as a day off, just in case you end up running over, because that is a holiday. So I think that needs to be recognized in there. On the outside chance you have one of those catastrophic winters where you end up going until, the 20th of June.
So I'm going to make my annual appeal that we should not start school until September 3rd. I'm a firm believer in allowing families to have that last long weekend in September. So that would add 2 days to the calendar. And in doing that, I know that we have talked before about the concern with athletics. That the kids need to have a certain number of practices in prior to being able to play their first game, and sometimes their first games are the second day of school. This will only really involve 2 days, and because the coaches, knowing the schedule, can sort of plan, some coaches were able to build in extra practices, so if you had to miss a practice, that was okay. So a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than Jamie and Brian in terms of parental schedules and stuff like that. I look at it as sort of the time with the kids. And I know in my family, in a number of families that I'm aware of, that last weekend before the kids go back to school, that last long weekend is one that's really special and filled with really great family time. So I was going to propose that we go back to school on the 3rd. Troy, shifting your PD days to the end of that week.
Yep. So
Can I-
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Can I weigh in on that real quick, Steph?
Can I just finish going through my calendar?
Oh, you're gonna go through the whole
No,
thing?
I got more. So I am also a fan of restoring that extra day in February. So we used to have a week. Then we were down to that Monday and Tuesday in February. And we're losing that this year for weather. And Troy, I think you're talking about taking it out altogether here. I think that break is really helpful for kids. I don't actually think it's that long. And honestly, when I'm thinking about summer, like summer doesn't really start till a little later. So It gives that break. And I actually think that if you speak to some nurses that work in schools, they might also tell you that little break in February gives a second to get everybody away from each other and clear out the germs. Again, it does build in a bit of time for a family that might want to spend a little bit of extra time together. So I know that that is not always popular, but that is going to be my annual pitch to restore the calendar to the way I think it's better.
All right, so then at that point, you can never have extra days in May, and I think you then need to make your school calendar a 181, not a 182 or whatever the case may be, because you're now going to push yourself on this calendar by pushing those 3. If you don't get rid of those 2 in May, you're pushing yourself out until the 18th. Now, if you get any snow days, your next day of school is the 20th. If all of a sudden you hit a blizzard and you're out for 6 days total, you now go to the absolute last day to have a legal school year in the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, so
So I think that becomes an issue that if we start to create all these shifts and add these days in, I get it. Family's important. Spending time with family and creating those memories is important. You know what? Choose a long weekend.
So I totally hear you, Steph, and I used to be of the same camp always, like, oh, can't we start after Labor Day? We did that last year. Getting the feedback from, because this is about not our own agendas, but about the education, getting the feedback from teachers, what the feedback I got from administrators, that was not a great experience. They would rather get them in, get them started, get going. It got to be, they were exhausted come June. They're done. The kids aren't learning anymore. Then also getting feedback from some students after that period, they were ready to come back. And especially when sports were picking up and everything else, they were kind of ready to come back. So I get that that can be a nice long weekend for families, but it is about what's the best way to maximize education. And we do have educators here that could chime in on that. And from everything I heard, they were like, please don't do that again. And then, and also Troy is bringing forward the calendar that he worked through with his administrators, saying this is the best calendar for us educationally.
I totally agree with you in terms of people who said, we didn't like that calendar. I know that there were teachers that said we didn't like that Labor Day break. There were administrators that said it. There were students and there were parents that said, I'd much rather be out in June. But I think it's anecdotal. And I personally, while I didn't take a survey, spoke with administrators, teachers, students, and parents that also say, we don't like that. We like the way it used to be when kids went back after Labor Day. So that's all I'm saying. It's just, it literally is my annual pitch to go back after Labor Day. I think we could have handled the sports thing differently. I think it was a big shift for us. We didn't, so we weren't maybe ready for that. I know it was really taxing on the kids that last 10 days before school started. I also know that this is the calendar that Troy put together with his administrators, but I think it's also important to recognize that it's also our job to make sure that we are supporting our community, right? So we have the educators who are going to tell us what they think is best educationally, and I just think it's nice to give us a little bit of a different perspective. It sounds like we have some at the table now, even from educators that say, hey, these PD days aren't maybe the best for families. These half PD days, Jamie is saying, maybe not so great. It's difficult from a family and childcare perspective. So I appreciate everybody's feedback on it. I just wanted to add mine as well.
I just want to say, I guess I'm confused a little bit because we still have the long weekend, right? So you're saying it's the last long week, but we still have the long weekend.
It's that we bring the kids back before it. And so it sort of changes what that might look like. So if you had plans, your plans look a little different on Friday, right? To start that long weekend because your kid's having a regular school day. So we're really talking about like a day and a half before that weekend.
I guess I would just say I appreciate the start beforehand. I've always enjoyed having, honestly, I prefer to have the 3 days than the 4 days than the 5 days. I think it's a wonderful way for families to transition back. I think it's a great way for kids to work their way back. I think that going in even on a 4-day week to begin with, is weirdly long when they've been on break, and it's awesome to have a couple of days, then they get a weekend, then you have a few more days than it would have been, and then that longer week. From an educational point of view, I think that that transition back in works really well. You get to focus on your SEL pieces in those first couple of days a little bit, then you get to, get them back into their schedule, and then you get to move forward. So, obviously this is a different situation because we need those 3 PD days based on the PDEC stuff. If it comes through the state Board of Ed and everything actually works out the way it's supposed to, which sure that's going to happen. But I guess, making the best out of the situation, having the 2, then the 4, and then the 5, I think is the best way to start off the year personally. But
I think even towards the end of the year, the kids that go to summer school, as my son has blessed me with for the last 3 years, it gives them that break. Going back before Labor Day, at least he has a week or 2 off before. Last year, they got out of school, they went right into summer school. By the time summer school was over, I think they had like, I don't know, maybe 2.5 good weeks of summertime. Granted, it's, it is what it is, but I think it gives them more time to enjoy their summer if they go back before Labor Day.
I would also say the storm days piece of things I struggle with, because I know from my personal point of view and my own situation, generally speaking, my storm days mirror the storm days that we have here. So it doesn't affect me as much, but I can't imagine how difficult that would be when you're trying to set up things and you don't necessarily know how it's going to work and what's going to come out. I know it's become the more common practice to have the storm days built in. And I guess I don't know, Troy, perhaps you know, is this because they stopped allowing us to set our graduation date and leave it? Is that kind of what happened there? Because it used to be that we were allowed to set a graduation date, and as long as it didn't extend beyond 5 days after that for the end of school, you could maintain your graduation date and give early finals for seniors. Is that no longer the case?
I think that, no, you can, I mean, the board can agree to let graduation happen, but you still have to have 180 days for the kids, so they'd be coming back to school after graduation.
But it
Yeah.
there used to be an adjustment to that, because I know when I taught high school, that was one of the things that happened. And we sometimes had up to 6 days afterward where seniors weren't required to report. And it was a state law that it allowed seniors in their senior year, if the school set the date of graduation, but then it was affected by storm days, that didn't get changed. Does anyone know if that's?
So my understanding, and we went through this at my school, because for years they just because of their structure, did things a certain way. And we found out that technically you're not, I guess, or at least our previous head of school found that you're not really supposed to set your graduation day in stone, like engrave it on anything, until April 1. Because at that point, that's when you can be fairly certain. And if anything happens after April 1, good for you. But April 1 is kind of that magic date. Now, can you set it and work around it? If you have certain structures, yes. Like St. Bernard's, they might do about 163 days, right?
That's the beauty of a private school, though, right? I mean,
Right, and I'm
that
sure,
makes
and I'm
sense.
sure an independent school can probably do the same thing. But when you're talking about a public school, you have to wait until April 1st.
I might as well say something. I don't have any kids in school anymore. I have grandkids, but I seem to recall there was a lot of problems when we started later. I don't know if we were the last school in the district or in the third or area that graduated, and the kids got nothing for education in the last week or so. Is feedback I got from some of the parents. But anyway, it's my opinion on that. I have one little nit on this. I don't know if it's stupid, or I'll say it anyway. As far as, instead of saying school will close upon completion, how about last day of classes after completion of 182 days? Because the school is technically still open, right? You have summer school, admin, whatever else, so.
School goes after instead of upon, is that?
No, this doesn't close really. does it?
Oh, we're closed. Oh,
I would
oh,
just
see.
say last day of classes, that's all, or something like
no,
that, after completion of 182 days.
So the 18th you have here as a no school. Are you keeping that, Troy? I got lost about.
I suggested that you could just make that a school day if you wanted to make June 13th the last day, because right now the last day is on a Monday.
I like your idea of the 13th ending, but I think I have to agree with Brian of like around that Memorial Day, maybe that might be that's tricky again for child.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, we could definitely take out the weather day on the 27th and make it a school day.
Yeah.
And then that would bring the last day back to the 13th.
Yeah, that's nice. I agree
If-
with Stephanie. I like the couple days in February. It's nice, but.
And the thing is that that also aligns more with,
Sorry.
Sure, try mine.
I know it's just because it's getting feedback into the other ones, because for some reason, the volume on this tonight is on infinity. But I think what you're looking at is when you have those 2 days in February, that's also more aligned with the partner districts that we have. So it's not also creating transportation issues with the towns that are sending students here that aren't in West Stonington. And that's more in line with the regional calendars as well.
I'm not 100% that sure, because I'm pretty sure ours is a storm day as well.
You can still make that 18th a storm day. You can take it away, but most districts in the area are putting those 2 days in there. And then if they need to recoup a day, that's where they're recouping the day.
So would the move be that we would eliminate the 27th as a storm day and make the 18th a storm day?
Yeah. I think that makes probably the most sense.
We've consistently used at least 2 storm days every year, correct? I mean, as long as I can remember, the past
Well,
4
we've
years
used
might
2
be.
this year so far.
So I think we want to keep at least 2. If what we're looking to do is set a Friday graduation date, because otherwise there's no point in trying to push our graduation date back if we don't have enough storm days. Because then all we're going to do is if we get more than 2, if we were just eliminating all we have is 1 storm day, just in order to move the date of graduation to a Friday, then if we have 2 snow days, it goes back to a Monday.
So I have no problem if the board wants to make February 18th the weather day instead of May 27th, but that doesn't bring us back to the 13th. Because you're still keeping, no, I guess it does. No, it does, because the 18th right now we're saying is not a school day, so it would be a school day if needed. So rather than 3 days off, if there's no weather, it's only 2, right, so it brings us back to the 13th.
I seem to recall a couple years ago that I don't think there were any days used.
Oh, there was a hurricane or some crazy storm.
Oh, right. It wasn't winter weather.
There was no snow.
There was
snow,
stormy
but we
weather.
lost multiple days in the fall.
Yeah, it was in October. Yeah.
So what does the calendar, Troy, look like that we're going to vote on? Because mine looks a little kooky now after this discussion.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around this at 9 o'clock at night. So,
I have a clean one.
I can quickly state, basically storm day on the 18th of February. You have school on the 27th of May. And graduation moves to the 13th of June. Or last day of school moves to the 13th of June.
yeah, because what we did is we added 1 school day.
The school day is added because
On
the
the
18th is now a
27th.
storm day.
Right, so by adding 1 school day, we're able to move the last day back a day.
Because the 27th
correct.
replaces the 18th, which
Yeah.
wasn't school and now is a storm day.
Yeah, that's the only change that I think everybody agreed upon, other than the wording Alex pointed out. We'll come up with something different for that.
And you wouldn't November, you wouldn't consider any little changes to November. November's just a little
Yeah, I think
Crazy.
it's the parent conferences on the 7th and 8th are half days, right? And,
Yeah.
it corresponds with the end of the first, quarter or trimester, I think, for grades closing, so it makes sense to have them there.
Because it coordinated with the high school.
Is our, so our high school's in quarters, so we get nothing.
Right.
The elementary school is entirely off because our trimester wouldn't
Right,
be
it would be
over
early
till the end
December.
of,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Nobody knew anything.
We had no grades. We just went in and got to talk and see a couple of assignments and had no real grasp of complete, like, here's where they really are at this point. That might be a move somewhere else at some point, but
Yeah,
that's
well,
a discussion for another year.
yeah, or you could discuss it now. I mean, I could bring this back to my administrators and say, hey, look, how about moving the
Well, no, but it's about
Conference
every
date.
elementary school parent schedule, because the problem is that, and I know that this, I've heard from a large swath of elementary parents, is that you went in, you only got, especially when you get to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, when everything is split up amongst multiple teachers and you're meeting with your homeroom teacher, you don't even know if you should be talking specifically to the science teacher where your kid is doing poorly or things like that, because they haven't even really hit the major assessments yet.
So maybe, I mean, you can move them to
But-
December 5th and 6th if you want.
But I know the move was last year that you wanted to unify conferences between
Yes, because
high
we wanted
school
to
and
have
elementary.
half days for both, yeah.
Which makes all the sense in the world. I'm just gonna ask if we're gonna unify and have them, the middle high school and the elementary school at the same time. We have to figure out parking. That was atrocious.
Troy, do you want to take a bit on this calendar? Bring
Yeah.
it back? I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
we're asking you to reconsider a whole bunch of things, and I
Yeah,
don't
well,
want you to make
I
a
could
rash
talk about the
decision.
conference dates and what would work for both schools. And it might be no big deal for the high school to say, okay, yeah, we could do it on the 5th and 6th, and maybe it's better for the elementary school, and then we'll just hire like a few people to direct parking, like Judy's really good at it now, I saw it. And Brian is very passionate about parking working well, so with the two of you, we're gonna be all set.
We'll order vests.
We have plenty over here for that.
Thank you.
So, so then I think we're not going to vote, I think.
Yeah,
is what we're gonna do. We're not going to vote on
Yeah,
it
I would
tonight.
say don't vote tonight.
Okay, so then, it is 9:00. And if there are no other things that we need to discuss
I
about
move to adjourn.
calendar, we have to have public
Second.
comment.
Second that.
We have to have public comment. Do we have any public comment? I see no public comment. Would you like to make your motion now?
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're all in favor, Irma. Irma, did you get, Irma, that Brian came in at 6:42? Okay.